Just joined me. Treasurer, thank you for popping straight up.
Great to be here, Leigh.
Treasurer, is this what political retreat looks like? Last year you were telling Australians that everybody had to make sacrifices because you had no choices but to make painful decisions. The state of the budget was that parlous, and that to do anything else would constitute intergenerational theft. This year it's time for handouts and new spending. How do you explain that about turn?
I'm sorry, there are no handouts. This is about...
A tax break is a form of handout.
Well, no, it isn't. It's actually giving Australian small businesses some of their own money back to invest in new plant and equipment that is going to create jobs.
At a time when revenue is going down. But, Treasurer, on this point about the message you've been sending the public, since the last budget you've backflipped on numerous plans, you've dropped talk of a debt and deficit emergency, you've relied on excuses for which you pilloried your predecessor Wayne Swan. Do you accept that voters are thoroughly confused not only about what your government stands for but also about your competence? Well,
no, I think they're confused about what you're saying because we've faced incredible headwinds. I mean, the iron ore price has more than halved.
And when Wayne Swan used to say things like that, you jumped on him.
And yes, I did, because the problem was Labor locked in future growth in spending that was unsustainable. It's hugely important. It's a big difference, Leigh, is that they kept building in new spending and they put time bombs in the budget that were unfunded.
I assure you I will take that up with Chris Bowen very shortly. Let me take you to something that's an example of what I'm talking about as to why the public might be confused, which is paid parental leave. The Coalition went to 2 elections promising a very generous scheme. The Prime Minister said it was something in which he believed passionately. It was much more generous than what's currently available. Now, not only has that policy been dropped, in the budget you're winding back the currently less generous scheme that's available to women and accusing women who've legally accessed it of double-dipping and being frauds.
Well, firstly, I don't think it's fair that someone can get their private scheme paid for by their employer or being paid... Can I answer the question?
The central part of the question is it's confusing to people, isn't it, when you have one policy and you replace it with another?
I'm about to answer the question. Please.
Speaking of borrowing money, for the past 5 years, we've heard you talk repeatedly about a budget emergency, about a crisis of debt and deficit. When you were using that language, net debt was about 12% of GDP. Under your government, it will peak at 18% of GDP the year after next. Yet now, you don't see an emergency.
Well, hang on. What about what we were left with and where it was going?
And I will take that up with Chris Bowen, but what I'm saying... It is an important point, that's why I'll take it up with him. But I'm saying that you said it was an emergency when it's 12%, now it's 18%. Well, we're not hearing talk of an emergency.
We're trying to rein it back, Leigh.
Is it still an emergency?
It was going to $667 billion.
But why?
And we pulled it back. If I can answer the question, please. We pulled it back.
You've not explained to me why there's been the change in emphasis and language.
Because we're fixing the problem.
Because I just pointed out to you that net debt is going to peak at 18% of GDP.
Because we are trying to get the deficits down, and when you get a deficit down to zero and you start running surpluses, that's when you can start paying back debt. Now, if I can just answer.
But, Treasurer, on this point about the size of government, today the budget reveals the government spending as a percentage of GDP is 25.9%. That is the same as the peak of the previous Labor government spending at the height of the global financial crisis.
Not true. They got to 26%. We're getting it
down.
You're
at 25.9.
And it's too high.
Over and over again, Treasury makes statements in the budget papers such as that this level of spending highlights the need to do more to bring spending down over the medium term. It says the task of budget repair remains ongoing and more work needs to be done in future budgets to continue to build a sustainable fiscal trajectory. You've warned in the past, as everyone will remember, about taking the easy path and leaving it to future generations. You've called it intergenerational theft. Why are you giving yourself a leave pass in this budget?
Well, we're not.
Well, you're not cutting spending.
Well, I'm sorry. Compared to the mid-year update in December, every year of the forward estimates we're spending less in dollars than we were going to 6 months ago.
The forecast show...
Most importantly, if I can finish, as a result of our initiatives in the budget.
Are you leaving it to a future government to have to deliver the type of budget you tried to deliver last year? Someone's going to have to do that.
We're not passing the buck. We're not passing the buck because the buck stops here. Every dollar of taxpayers' money needs to be treated as something very precious.
Treasurer, a final question. After last year's missteps, do you accept that this budget is make or break for you as Treasurer?
It's not about me, Leigh.
Well,
it is about my country. I came into this job to make Australia better.
Treasurer.
I came into Parliament to make Australia better.
I don't doubt that, Treasurer. But your backbench was very unhappy with how it went last year. It was part of the reason for a leadership spill.
You can do that.
Well, that actually occurred. It's not gossip.
You can go through all of that commentary and gossip. I'm focused on one thing, and that is building a stronger and more prosperous Australia. That is my only motivation, and that's what this budget delivers.
Treasurer, thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Right now.